Welcome, today's story is full of drama. Like and subscribe to stay updated. Let's get started.
How do I even begin? My parents had just been killed in a car accident, and I was angry, lost, completely untethered. There was no long, drawn-out decision process, no deep soul-searching. I walked into a recruiting office, signed the papers, and that was that. I joined the army. It was as simple as that, at least on the surface. What else was I supposed to do? Sit around drowning in grief, pretending life still made sense? No. I needed a way out, a purpose, something to drown out the noise in my head. The army didn't ask questions, didn't demand explanations. It gave me structure, a mission, and most of all, an escape. So yeah, that's how it started, pretty straightforward. On April 3, 1972, during Operation Hammerstorm, elements of the 12th Brigade, 2nd Infantry Division, decided it was a perfect day for some fishing. Of course, by fishing, I mean we were deep in Operation Iron Claw, conducting operations in Laos. The mission was going well, but we were up against a hardened PAVN division. Tough, disciplined, and unafraid to fight. These weren't just any soldiers. They were battle-tested regulars. Most of us, on the other hand, were still green. But in Southeast Asia, it didn't take long to gain experience the hard way. While we were airmobile, it also meant we were in the middle of nowhere with no way out except by air. So we fought. We ended up in some hole they called a village, civilians were everywhere, and I did something really stupid. I got my picture taken with a little kid, about 4 or 5. It was the height of stupidity, but I did it anyway. I jumped up in the middle of a firefight, grabbed her, and got her out of the area. I mean, I was in the middle of one hell of a gunfight, and I was ready to piss all over myself. I was so scared. Except I was carrying this kid and trying to shoot as I ran toward my lines, if you could call a squad a line. Someone got a picture of me with this ball of fire behind me. It looked a lot closer than it really was. And a 7.62mm tracer round from an AK-47 came ripping through my side. Yes, we knew it was an AK because by then we were using 5.56 rounds, and the PAVN used green tracers while we used red. In the picture, you saw this green light passing through my side, a red ball of fire behind me, and this kid in my arms. It was one hell of a picture. The little kid was looking at me with this "you saved me" puppy dog look. It was lucky, it was a tracer, and it only grazed me. I still have a scar from the burn, but it was a cool picture. You know how kids don't understand. I got the kid to safety, and she stayed with me during the entire firefight. I even put my vest on her and gave her my steel pot to wear. She did look cute, and there's a picture of that too, her sitting in my lap as I looked up over a damn log, in a hole, and doing my best to play Audie Murphy until we got enough help so I could give her to the medics. They took her to a Catholic hospital for the locals and gave me a quick patch job. And because my shift was not yet over, I did not get to go home. We called that black humor. Damn, it would be my second Purple Heart. That is one decoration no one wants. What I did not think about until later was, who the hell was the photographer? Why didn't I see him? And when did he take the pictures? We kept fighting for the next 11 hours until the gunships came in, and Puff the Magic Dragon showed up, raining smoke and fire on the PAVN. You really had to see Puff to believe it. They didn't have the 105 cannon on it yet. But this lumbering AC-130 that flew only counterclockwise in a slow arc was like a real dragon. It opened up with its 20mm Vulcan 6-barrel Gatling cannons that shot 6,000 rounds a minute. All you saw was smoke and the red tracers forming a line you could almost walk on. If you've ever seen a .50 caliber machine gun round, well, add another 10 to it because this thing was spitting out 20mm rounds like there was no tomorrow. It was smoke and fire, and it rained death on everything below. It was a true weapons platform, and it could fly around for 5 or 6 hours on end. And when Puff was firing everything at once, you had all this hot brass raining down on you too. It had no defenses, unless you consider that the best defense is a good offense. When Puff showed up, you had mixed feelings. First, you were damn glad it was your gunship. But second, you realized, damn, we are in deep shit if they sent Puff out for us. Well, the picture ended up in a few magazines, and people saw it. Now I was in trouble. Big trouble. I wanted a career in the army, maybe get a commission and spend the rest of my life being taken care of. Or getting killed. But as of now, the best I got was getting into the instant NCO program. I became a staff sergeant pretty damn quick. It was usually a ticket to a body bag. Instant NCOs were the first to die in combat. Not gonna happen to me, boys and girls. Famous last words. So we were still on the operation. The kid was gone. And we were someplace else in Laos when I got hit. Hard. Real hard. Ticket home. Third Purple Heart. And I had actually extended my tour to stay in the fight, because I'm a real dumb man after all. The PAVN knew the ground, especially after all those years of war, and they sighted us in pretty good. There's something inherently dumb about being someplace where no one looks like you. We might as well have been wearing bright red coats with white belts forming an X over our chests. I wasn't wearing any of that, but round eyes and GI-issued clothes meant, shoot at me. So I ended up with lots of holes in me, my blood in their mud, and I was in very deep. Don't believe what you read about morphine. It does not work all that well. A medic stabilized me and a bunch more like me. Then, it was a nice flight in a chopper dodging ground fire, sometimes not, to a field hospital, then one in Saigon, and from there to Germany. Back in the day, all of us wounded ended up in Germany or the Philippines first, then stateside. Now people were looking for me, and they were pissed. The picture seemed to be a problem. Some relatives saw me, reports were made, congressmen were contacted, and I was being talked at. Not with, by people with more stripes than a zebra. Keep your mouth shut were my orders. And that's it in a nutshell. Don't die. Hang in there. Keep my mouth shut. For months later, I was standing in front of the Secretary of Defense, and someone was pinning the Distinguished Service Cross on me. I was promoted to Sergeant First Class E7. There are only 9 enlisted pay grades. When that was over, I was surrounded by a shitload of Command Sergeants Major. That would be E9S 3 up, 3 down, a star in the middle, a wreath around each side of the star. A Sergeant Major is an enlisted man's general, and they let you know it if you ever forget. They were all wearing CIB's, Combat Infantryman's badges, but the part that was scary was they had 2 stars on the damn things. These guys went through World War II, Korea, and now Laos. They were some bad dudes. Each had a Purple Heart with stars on it, Distinguished Service Crosses, Silver Stars, Bronze Stars with V devices. V means valor as engaged in combat, and every other decoration you could imagine. And then one of them wore a ribbon with stars on a field of blue. The Medal of Honor. I came to attention and saluted when I saw it, as I was required to do. How the hell did I miss that when I was with the Secretary of Defense? I knew I was being ambushed, and by the best too. I wasn't sure when the shooting was going to start, but there was no way to get out of this one. I was just along for the ride. I followed along as they led me from location to location in the Pentagon. I was still moving slow, but they never let me stop. I got a new picture taken, and now I was given a gray ID card. It was not supposed to be gray. They were all glad-handing me, until we got into this one special little room. I called it the Attitude Readjustment Room. You are at attention, Sergeant. Listen, you little jerk, you screwed with our army, you asshole. Yes, you're a hero, who the hell isn't? But goddammit, you are out of here. As of today. You are going to keep your mouth shut forever. Do you read me, young SFC? My only response was, yes, Sergeant Major. In a very loud and clear voice. I now moved to and then stood at the rigid but comfortable position of attention. Feet at a 45 degrees angle, head and eyes forward, fingers slightly cupped, and my thumbs along the seam of my trousers. Hell, I had so many people yelling at me I wasn't sure who I was agreeing with, but agree I would. It was the picture. That damn picture. Yes, it got me promoted to SFC, and it probably got me the DSC. When what I did was hardly worth an Army Commendation Medal with a V device. And it got me recognized. You see, I was only 16 years old at the time it was taken. I had used the birth certificate of an older brother who died shortly after birth to get into the Army. I was only 15 when I enlisted. Now, it got me kicked out. But because of the photo, the publicity, and my wounds, I got a disability retirement and a 100% disability rating. Because I was shot up. And I was gone. I was lucky I didn't get a void enlistment. But now I had a pension. 16. There was hell to pay. And I was in hell. So, the military followed the tried and true rule up and out. And that is what they did to me. How do you go back to high school and finish your sophomore, junior, and senior years after spending time in a war zone, knee-deep in mud and chaos? You don't. I was a prisoner waiting for a prison. By then, I was already emancipated. No home to return to, no one to guide me, and no real purpose beyond surviving. What was I supposed to do? Sit in a classroom and pretend like I belonged there? The truth was, I had seen too much, lived too hard, and there was no going back to being a regular kid. My world had changed, and so had I. After what I call my attitude readjustment conference, things mellowed out. For the remainder of my active-duty military career, about 2 more hours actually, I was out at midnight. But no one was going to wait around for that. I told them I loved the Army and wanted to stay. But that was a no-go. I got my one and only drink in the United States at that meeting. And I gave the toast, Infantry Queen of Battle. They were satisfied with that, since they were all infantry and wore the insignia. I could hardly keep the damn liquor down. It burned like hell. That was my last drink for many years. I was given some lists, a shirt, and a few other items. And I was a civilian. Almost. Looks like the sergeant majors took a liking to me. I was given a place to stay and a military school to attend. And I fit right in. Except, at this school I didn't have to wear pretend decorations. I wore the real thing. Which also kept me out of the hazing route. Even the teachers, every one of them a combat veteran, treated me with a certain amount of respect. Hell, all I ever did was get shot at and hit 3 times. And one was only a scratch. I finished high school at a military academy in North Carolina in 2 years. Then I was told that a military college was in my future, but not a commission. Or I could go to a regular civilian college. I went for the military one. I'm not supposed to say the name of the college, but its initials are TMI. I even did OCS. But that was just for drill. I was not someone they wanted in the Army, Navy, Air Force, or even the Marines. But the Army takes care of its own. And I was now, obviously, adopted. It was also during this time that I went to a restaurant in a Chinatown area on a trip to Boston. But it was not Chinese. It ended up being a Vietnamese restaurant. Anyway, the husband and wife were arguing back and forth, and I just interrupted and told them what I wanted. I was tired of waiting. They stopped and just stared at me. Then they asked me a few questions about my order, and I responded. Then I stopped. I had been talking to them in Vietnamese. I hadn't even thought about it. It just happened. From that time on, I would go in and eat at a Vietnamese restaurant whenever I had the chance. The language was second nature to me. Must have had something to do with learning it at a young age. Remember, I was only 15 when I went in. So now I am 22. 6 years have passed. And I got a job in the defense industry back home in Texas. And by that time, the war was over. Okay, that war was over. And they wouldn't let me play in any other wars. It was women and children first, then they would ask for me. I had a degree in engineering, and I worked on military projects. For some reason, I had a pretty high security clearance despite my little error in taking my dead brother's birth certificate and using it to enlist at 15. But I was depressed. That was my excuse. Parents killed and I was depressed. So I enlisted. Now that is a military career. In the Army at 15. In a war for over a year. Get 3 Purple Hearts. The CIB. A few other ones. And get retired as an E7 SFC at 16. And all because I did something stupid, like picking up a kid in a war zone instead of keeping my dumbass down. Hell, they are not legally allowed to send you even close to a war zone unless you are 18. Damn, that was a short career. Well, that was one good deed that did not go unpunished. So, at 22 years of age, I had my degree and a good job. I was in Dallas, Texas, so I bought a house with 2 bedrooms in a quiet suburb. Luck would have it, the place next door became available and I bought it too. The guy at the bank had been in Korea 2nd Infantry Division just like me, so he approved both loans. Now, I had a real nice-sized piece of property, and I went on a building frenzy. I ended up with 4 bedrooms plus a master bedroom. I also added a pool, a swim lane, and a jacuzzi. I left the second house alone and rented it out, but the backyard was the size of a postage stamp. I used most of it for the pool and a few other things. This was where I wanted to stay. I didn't worry about any property line because I built where I wanted to. I owned it all. The place was too big for just me now, but I figured I would have a family, and we would fill the place with kids. Now I'm 24 and my building phase is over. Now it's the living phase, but I needed help. I went down to the Vietnamese Cultural Center to see if there was someone who would be available as a housekeeper, and the older, the better. I seemed to spend a lot of time at Vietnamese centers and locations. I sort of grew up into adulthood there in Vietnam. There was a lot of discussion going on, and I was told they would find someone for me to talk to. So they found me a nice older woman about 70 or 80. Okay, she looked that old. She was nice, and I moved her in to keep the place clean. I called her Ba, which is sort of my way of screwing up the word for grandmother or old woman, without identifying which side of the family she was from. She would call me Chow, which means grandson, but a very young grandson. She always smiled when she said it, and I knew that we had a connection. She even did some cooking too. I had developed a taste for Vietnamese food except for century egg. Sometimes it's called a 1,000-year-old egg. If it's more than a few minutes old, I don't eat it. I hated that and just couldn't get into an egg buried in the ground for months, then eat the rotten duck embryo inside. And the smell? Never, never, never going to eat it again. Way too salty too. I spent as much time on a military base, retired, as I did off of them. I shopped at them, got my medical care on them. They were part of my home life. Fort Worth Army Depot, Dallas Naval Station, even the Brooks Medical Center down in San Antonio. During this time, I did the dating thing. I was in demand, employed, single, and had a home. The first one I fell for was Liza. By then, I was 26. And man, she was everything a guy could want. She was 22 years old, tall, red hair with a large frame, a waist you could put your hands around, long legs, and a knack for giving the best damn BJs this side of Saigon. We spent so much time together that by the end of it, we were both completely exhausted, barely able to move. After 6 months, we set a date. But Ba told me, no good, Chow. No good. She kept telling me no. But I was bound to screw up my life on my own. One day, I got an envelope with pictures in it. I did not like them. They were 4x5 glossy prints. 20 or 30 of them. Back then, there was no such thing as digital prints or email. I went to see Liza at her parents' house, and we had a very frank discussion. I wanted my engagement ring back. Things were not going to work out. We should both move on. Her mother and father were incensed. Liza was incensed. Liza, are we supposed to be exclusive? I asked. She agreed we were. Who is this, Liza? I asked, as I produced a picture that showed her with a man who was definitely not me. Standard was the answer. Just a friend. Nothing happened. Just happened to meet and say hello. Only met him once. Where did I get this? It was standard stuff. Are you following me? I never answered that question. Daddy was getting mad that I was questioning his daughter. Then I showed her another picture of her with a different man. Same answer. Liza, looking at the clothes they are wearing, you will agree that these were taken at different times? I asked, as I showed her 2 more pictures of her with the same men. Of course, she agreed. So, you met them more than once, didn't you? Again, there was some agreement, which was definitely different from we only met one time. I tossed the remaining pictures onto the table, with her entire family sitting there, staring in shock at what they saw. Liza was speechless. Then, still in a daze, she looked at me as I said, "May I have my grandmother's engagement ring back, please?" Without a word, she slipped it off and handed it to me. I walked out and never spoke to her again. I never told anyone why we broke up. If someone asked, I just said, we decided it would be better to move on. But I knew the truth would spread. People talk. She would talk. Her friends would talk. And eventually so would her family, but not because of me. I just wanted out and I got out. I never did find out who sent me the pictures, but I was glad I got them. It got very strange. With anyone I was getting too close to, I would get a picture, or a cassette recording, or something that would show me that I was getting too close to someone I should not be getting close to. I never got engaged again. I just moved away from that person, as if it was nothing at all. Just moving on. No confrontation. Just called less frequently, fewer dates until it was a thing of the past. As time passed by, Ba started moving slower. So when she asked for someone to help her in this big house, I agreed. It took a few weeks, but soon we had a new house guest. Her name was Lan. She was 16 years old and going to school here. She was also Vietnamese. She was a very sweet girl. She had all those things that girls have and did all the things they do. She was very pretty and had lots of dates. But she kept to her schoolwork too. I tried to stay out of her way. Since I was not her father, I didn't tell her how to live her life. But Ba did a good job of that. She was like a guardian for her. We ate dinner together and went out together. And by together, I mean all three of us. I didn't date 16-year-olds. But it was not unusual for all of us to sit down and have a meal together at the end of the day and talk about what was going on. Lan was like having a little sister around on 1 week's notice. I let her have sleepovers and pool parties. I tried to stay away. I didn't let them drink, and I would know if they did. I don't drink, and there was never any alcohol in the house. Narcotics were always available, but not in my house. Lan was a bit rebellious, but not more than any other girl her age. During this time, I found myself in love again. I was now 27, and it was time I should be settling down. I met Celeste at work. Celeste was tall and blonde with a petite frame, a small waist, and long legs that she loved to wrap around me. She was a southern girl with a cute accent and so soft-spoken that there were times you could hardly hear her. She was smart too, very smart, and she knew her job well. This was a woman who would breed some smart kids. Yes, I wanted children. We dated more than a few times, and then I asked her if she wanted to come over to the house to hang out and have a little barbecue. She agreed. Since the event would not take place until Saturday, and this being Friday, her driving all the way from Fort Worth would be exhausting, so it was decided she would stay at my place Friday night. She thought about it and agreed. Only a fool would want to make that drive, she said with a smile and a loving kiss. We stopped at her place for clothes and then made the 2-hour drive to my place. Celeste was pretty good in the sack. We ate each other up and screwed for an hour, took a nap, woke up, and did it again. Then, around 7 a.m., I got up and gave it to her one more time. It had been a while. Celeste went back to sleep, and I took a shower and went to make breakfast. But Ba just glared at me when she saw me that morning. Lan has girls over and they will be up soon, she said. She was right, one of the never-ending parties that young girls have. Well, this is my house and we can share, I said. The master bedroom was purposefully designed to be away from the others, for when my wife and I wanted to romp and not let the kids know what was happening. I made some breakfast and went back to the bedroom to feed my latest girlfriend. Only a few had seen my home, and now Celeste was one of them. We ate breakfast in bed. Then I gave her the bad news about all the kids being at the house. She said it was okay and that she would handle it. We headed out to the beach and took a little fun run, then walked back to the house. Celeste looked pretty good in a sweaty sports bra, and her long legs shined with the effort. She was not pale but not too tan either. She wore those nylon running shorts that would open at the sides when she ran. I had a hard time running with excitement, but I managed. When we got back to the house, the party was in full swing. Celeste and I freshened up, got cleaned up, and then headed outside to see the chaos unfolding in my backyard. There were high school kids everywhere, probably between 30 and 50 of them. Never took an official head count. Lan somehow knew exactly where everyone was. The girls were wearing what they called swimsuits, and the boys weren't much better. If I had to guess, a good number of the so-called high school boys hadn't actually set foot in a school in at least 2 years. There were the usual antics. Someone asking for help putting on sunscreen, kids tossing each other into the pool, and a game of Marco Polo where touching the other person seemed to be the main goal. Typical. I couldn't help but think how much simpler things used to be, when introductions were straightforward, and you knew exactly what to expect. I was about to grab some food for Celeste and me when I heard a commotion in the butler's pantry. Opening the door, I found one of the boys getting way too close to Celeste, definitely crossing the line. Without missing a beat, I simply said, "I'll call you a taxi," and shut the door. Lan was standing nearby, watching with her usual quiet observation. Then, with a little smirk, She opened the door again and quipped, "You're a taxi," before giggling to herself. This kid watched way too much TV. Without hesitation, she walked over to the phone, dialed Yellow Cab, and gave them our address. 5 minutes later, she had Celeste's clothes packed in a paper bag and handed them to her as the taxi pulled up. Funny enough, Celeste didn't leave the butler's pantry until the ride arrived. I could hear her talking to the guy inside, muttering something about Vietnam, fighting, and a few other choice words. When Celeste finally stepped out, the guy bolted in the other direction. Needless to say, there was no discussion, no walk to the taxi, no kiss goodbye, and I did not give her any money for the taxi. It was only 2 miles. Lon took my hand and led me outside into a waiting deck chair, handing me an iced tea. She still looked a little sad, but I told her to have fun. When I thought about it, I had another close call. But that is what dating is for. Periodically, I would see Lon looking over at me, but I would just smile and wave. It was not like anyone was going to shoot me. There was a Love's Barbecue over on Beltline Road, so I went over there for dinner and let the party go on without me. I ate a rack of pork ribs and some beef ribs too, just as filler, and brought a bunch home for lunch the next day. Ba and Lon laughed at me, saying they were overcooked and had too much sauce on them. But damn, I thought they were good. Sunday, the family went to Mass, and I wrote out my check to the Catholic hospital in Vietnam. Lon asked about it, and I told her I sent them $50 a week because they had taken care of someone for me, and were probably still doing it. And if not for her, then for someone else. They didn't exactly spend the money on narcotics and sex. And their boss didn't need a new Cadillac. He had a fiery chariot or some such thing. Monday, Celeste came into work looking like she had a bad weekend. Probably took the boy home, and he screwed her into the bed for the rest of the weekend. I did not ignore her. When it was business, it was business. But there was no banter and people noticed. I never said a word about it and ignored any questions. I did see her and the boy a few times, driving away from the parking lot together. But after a month, that seemed to stop. Dumb. Really screwed up. 3 months later, Celeste was putting on some major weight and soon took a leave of absence. It was getting time for me to do some serious work. I decided to leave gainful employment behind and start doing some consulting. I had a bunch of offers. Every time I went to a reunion with the guys, I would see the sergeant major from my attitude readjustment conference at least once a year, and the guys from the old unit, and some I never met before. There would be formal dances, and I would put on my dress mess and my black Stetson, which was standard for the first Cav, but not actually issued. It was fun, but I always went stag anyway. I had met some fellow soldiers, and their offer for consulting work finally got to me. And at the ripe old age of 27, I packed in my employment, kept my security clearance, and went into the military consulting business. I was making twice the money for half the work, but I had to do all the paperwork, pay taxes, and all that. But in the end, it was worth it. I was approaching 28, and Lon was nearing the end of her senior year in high school. We were having dinner when she started talking about her senior prom. I wasn't paying much attention until my name came up. That led to an unexpected conversation. Apparently, Lon thought I should take her to the prom as her escort since she didn't have a date. That didn't add up. She had plenty of guys interested in her. At 5 feet tall, an inch more with heels, barely 100 pounds, with long, straight dark hair, almond-shaped hazel eyes, and naturally sun-kissed skin, she turned heads wherever she went. She had no shortage of admirers. Still, she was 18 now, and in the end I agreed to go. Having got that out of the way, Lon decided to properly prepare me for the prom. We took dancing lessons together. I already knew how to dance, and so did she, but we needed to dance together, so we took some ballroom dancing classes. Then, Lon decided that we needed to practice at home. And we did. Every day. Soon, she put on her heels to ensure she practiced properly. She was drawing me in with careful precision, almost like a strategist setting a plan in motion. Then, she decided that whenever we were together, we would always share a dance. She did date, and I did observe her going out in miniskirts and revealing blouses. And I had to admit to a slight pang of jealousy. She told me it was going to be formal, so I had to dress appropriately. I begged off wearing a light blue or pink tuxedo. She saved me by stating that I should wear my uniform. And she was specific. She wanted me to wear not a tuxedo, but the mess dress, and my first cavalry black Stetson. It was almost a month to the prom, and now we were dancing all the time. I have to admit that I was getting affected by holding her in my arms all the time. Then, there was the time that she decided we needed to dance at the pool. Both of us in bathing suits, holding her in my arms, moving to music that no one could hear but us, feeling her flesh in my arms, her body molded against mine, flesh to flesh, my hands roaming, first her back, then down to her lovely butt, and back again. I could feel her breath on my chest. The 9-inch difference in height hardly mattered to either of us as she laid her head against my chest. Then, our movements became less and less until we were just standing there, arm in arm. I looked down at her as she looked up at me. It was slow motion for me as I moved my head down, and her lips moved toward mine. They touched, so softly, I almost doubted they touched at all, save for the shock I received. I felt her pucker and kiss softly back at me, as if moving too fast would break the magic spell we were under. The kiss was repeated by us both, but more was added. The pressure was firmer now. There was no doubt that we were both moving to fully embrace what was happening. We broke, and I looked into her eyes. Not a word was said. She and I moved even closer into each other. Our lips opened. The sweetness of her breath excited my passions. Her warm skin added to the feeling. My tongue briefly entered her mouth, only to be met by hers, seeking entry to mine. Her arms moved to go around my neck, holding me to her lips. We broke the kiss, and she looked deeply into my soul, and finding that which she wanted to find, pulled away from me. There had been a wall that existed between us, and the keeper of the gate was Ba. Ba was standing there watching as these events took place. Lon started to walk back to the house, but stopped and took my hand, and we walked past Ba into the house. We were just inside the door, and I pulled her back, and as she came back to me, her arms moved to surround me as mine moved to pull her into my grasp. This time, our kiss betrayed a rising and unrestrained passion. I carried her to my room and gently laid her on the bed. "Are you?" I started to ask, but was cut off as she pulled me into a kiss. "Are you sure about this?" I finally managed to finish. She kissed me again, this time with even more certainty, and I had my answer. "Are you I began another question, but she stopped me again. "No, but I've never been with anyone before," she admitted. My expression must have surprised her because she quickly added, "Not with a man. Not with a woman. Only with a boy. Someone my age. Just a boy." I smiled, realizing that if her only experience had been with someone young and inexperienced, I had my work cut out for me. I picked her up and carried her into the bathroom, where we stepped into the warm shower. As the water ran over us, we took our time, washing away the dust of the day. The jacuzzi tub slowly filled, adding a soothing ambience to the moment. We shared quiet touches, gentle and unhurried, memorizing the contours of each other's bodies. Her frame was delicate, her movements curious, yet hesitant, as she ran her hands over my scars. She paused, tracing them with her fingertips. A small, unspoken sadness flickered in her eyes when she touched the deepest one at my side. "You're beautiful," I told her softly. "Any artist would want to capture your image. Your perfection." She held me tightly, and as the water cascaded around us, I realized something I hadn't fully understood until that moment. "I love you, Lon," I whispered. I didn't realize it until now, but I know that I do. She didn't say anything right away. She just held me, as if the words themselves were enough. I felt a breeze, but didn't pay much attention to it. We shared a quiet moment, expressing how much we meant to each other. After rinsing off, we stepped out and made our way to the jacuzzi. On the counter, Ba had set out plates of fresh fruit, strawberries, melons, cherries, sliced pineapple, and an assortment of chocolates from C's. There were drinks too: apple juice, orange juice, grape juice, and even ice water. Clearly, Ba approved of us and the shift in our relationship. I helped Lon into the jacuzzi, offering her a strawberry and a piece of chocolate, followed by a sip of orange juice, all between soft, affectionate kisses. She leaned into me, first facing me, then resting against me, so I could gently brush my lips along her neck and ears. Her long black hair clung to her damp skin, making her look even more striking than before. "Lon, I don't know exactly when it happened, but I've fallen in love with you," I said as I held her close. "I'm not some naive kid, and this moment isn't fleeting. If at some point you choose to walk away, that's your decision. But for now, I'm here, fully committed. This isn't about anything temporary. It's about something real. So let's take our time and enjoy this. No rush." Lon melted into my touch, her body relaxed and warm as I held her close as I carried her to the bed. She grabbed a towel from the rack, and I gently laid her down, drying her off with care. From the bathroom, I retrieved a bottle of aromatic massage oil, light, smooth, and perfect for easing tension. I poured a small amount into my hands and began working it into her skin, kneading her shoulders, arms, and back with slow, deliberate movements. Her muscles responded to my touch, and she let out a soft sigh of contentment. I continued down her arms, over her hands, and along each finger, ensuring every part of her felt the warmth and care of my hands. Turning her onto her stomach, I repeated the process, massaging her back and legs with the same slow precision. She was completely at ease, her breathing deep and steady. I worked my way from the base of her neck down to her feet, taking my time, making sure no part of her was left untouched. When I turned her back over, I massaged her legs and worked up toward her waist and stomach, my hands moving in smooth, rhythmic motions. The warmth of the oil and the slow, careful massage left her fully relaxed, her body completely at peace. She looked at me with soft eyes, filled with trust and warmth. I pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead, then to her lips, sealing the moment with quiet affection. She reached for my hand and held it tightly, as if to say she never wanted to let go. As she rested, I stayed beside her, feeling the rise and fall of her breath, the warmth of her skin, and the quiet stillness between us. Soon, she turned and wrapped her arms around me. We kissed and fell asleep. It was not more than an hour later that we woke, still entwined in each other's love and body. But now, all the treats that we had left in the bath were placed on the side table next to us. I picked her up and carried her again into the shower, where I lovingly cleaned her body, and she washed mine. We took our time and made it a journey into discovery. When we were done, I dried her, and she did the same for me. In the bedroom, the bed had been changed and remade. Ba must really be happy about this. I fed my love some of the sweets we had been left. We dressed and walked, hand in hand, to the poolside area. It was there that Ba once again intervened, bringing us refreshments and some very nice Vietnamese delicacies. We asked her to sit, but she just smiled, kissed us both, and went back inside. Lon and I held hands as we looked out over the pool. Then we decided to go to the beach, leaving Ba to her thoughts and we to ours. We walked out onto the Galveston Pier and watched the men fish for what would surely be their dinners that evening. Lon and I moved into each other's embrace as we stood looking out at the Gulf of Mexico, and into the eyes of each other. She would look up at me and I would know, and I would bend and kiss her lips. This was public kissing, no deep tongue duels took place. I touched her face with my fingers, tracing the soft contours of her smile. I bent and kissed her again, this time without any sign that she wanted it. I wanted it. She returned the kiss with more than equal emotion. Lon, I am in love with you, but you must go to school. I would prefer you to go locally, but go you must. The University of Texas and Texas A&M are excellent schools. You must know yourself. I was at a loss as to how to move forward. She needed to learn about life. It was funny, but she would speak perfect English when she wanted to, and could also do the broken English game if needed by circumstances. For this, we spoke Vietnamese. Carlo, I love you. You are my life, and I will go to school. And I will share your home and your bed. I will not marry you until the time is right. But from this time on, I am yours and only yours. Lon, from this time forward, I am yours and only yours. And when you say the time is right, I will be your husband. No one will come between us, and we will live as man and wife, until you agree to marry me and actually become my wife. Or until you decide to move on. I am yours. She kissed my lips, so softly, I did not know what to make of it. Then we walked, hand in hand, back to the car and to our home. It had, in the period of less than 1 day, become our home. She told me she had another party set for Saturday and asked if I objected. When we got home, Lan wanted to change into something else. But instead of going into her room, she went into mine. During our absence, Ba had moved everything into it, changing it from mine to ours. The party that weekend was not for pool time. It was to show that Lan was now the lady of the house. And I think all of her girlfriends realized it when she changed clothes. She had at least one girl with her, and they went into our room to do it. Lan was beaming all day as she played hostess. The prom was going to be the next weekend, and I got us a room at the hotel where it was to be held. There was no need for a limo. We drove over the night before and stayed over. Since we were both over 18, there was no problem. I got us the penthouse suite. I still did not know what Lan was going to wear, but I would soon find out. She made me leave after I got dressed in my mess dress uniform. It is a bit gaudy, with light blue pants with a gold stripe, a darker blue cutaway jacket, and all the medals and awards but in miniature. Chevrons of rank are worn on the upper arm sleeve. And all other arm insignias are also worn, including time in service as well as time in combat areas. Instead of a standard hat, because I was 1st Cavalry, it was a black Stetson with a yellow cord to signify that I was infantry. I waited outside the suite in a chair I took out there. Lan and her girlfriends were getting dressed inside. When the door opened, there was the normal assortment of miniskirts, off-the-shoulder and strapless prom dresses. But nothing like Lan. She wore a traditional áo dai, the iconic dress of Vietnam. It was the first time I had ever seen her in traditional Vietnamese attire. The gown was made of pure white silk, featuring a fitted bodice fastened with delicate gold and silver clasps, flowing down to the floor. It was intricately embroidered with the same gold and silver threading, accented by matching piping. Like all áo dai, hers was slit from the waist down on both sides, allowing for effortless movement, revealing the elegant white silk pants underneath. The effect was mesmerizing. She seemed to glide into the hall, surrounded by layers of soft fabric, almost as if floating on air. She completed the look with white silk high-heeled shoes. And at that moment, I finally understood why we had practiced dancing with her in heels. Her hair, too, was styled traditionally, parted in the middle, long and straight, cascading over her shoulders, with thin gold and silver cords woven into her braids. The dinner was okay, but the dancing was marvelous. She blended into my body as we danced. A few of the guys wanted to dance with her, but I am a pig. I wanted it all. I just told them no. And Lan smiled as she went back to leaning her head on my chest. When one of the guys commented that I was being a little overprotective, Lan responded without hesitation. He has always been protective of me, she said. And as far as I am concerned, there is no way he could be overprotective. When the evening was drawing to an end, I asked Lan if she wanted to go to one of the suites that her friends had rented for the night. But she declined. I want to go back to our own room, she said, loud enough so the others could hear her. We entered our room, and she melted into my arms. I helped her out of her dress, and she did the same for me. As we stood there in our formal wear, she smiled and said, "Most girls have a big first on prom night, but I've already had mine. I do have a little surprise, though." With a playful wiggle, she stepped over to the nightstand, took something out, and returned with her hands behind her back. When I leaned down to kiss her, she returned it, before revealing a small gift, something she had planned just for tonight. The night was slow and deliberate, filled with laughter and shared moments. I made sure she was comfortable every step of the way, taking my time so the experience was something she could enjoy and remember fondly. By the time we stepped into the shower, we were both grinning, the warm water washing away the nervous energy of the night. There's something about moments like that, where intimacy and laughter go hand in hand, that makes them truly special. I awoke in the middle of the night, and we made love again. And at 7 a.m., our breakfast arrived. Lon stayed under the covers. The waiter smiled. We ate breakfast on the terrace, held hands, and kissed over and over. How many ways can you tell the person you are with that you love them? I am not sure. But between us, we had to have reached the hundreds, in word and deed. Around noon, it was time to leave. We packed our clothes and carriers and had the bellhop take them down while we changed into something less formal, though still presentable. On our way out, we ran into Lan's friends, who looked completely exhausted. We joined them for lunch. Lon and I, feeling refreshed and energized while they just looked worn out. That was our routine for the next 2 years. Lon focused on school while I managed my consulting business. Whenever I could schedule a trip out of town during her vacations or school breaks, we traveled together. I never left her behind. We were always a team. At the end of her sophomore year, she kissed me and said yes. I already knew what the question was, as I had asked it over and over. I asked her to marry me again and gave her my grandmother's ring. It was a very large wedding, and I think most of the Vietnamese community was there, as well as every other person Lon and I had ever met. Half of the 1st Cavalry was there too, as well as some of the sergeant majors who had kicked my ass back in DC the day I got my retirement orders. But that is not the story. Lon had told me to have a bunch of 20s ready for our wedding night. She had a surprise for me. We shut down the dinner at midnight and went back to our home. We would leave in the morning on our honeymoon. I wanted my surprise. She went into the bathroom to get ready, and I used the other one. But I don't know why. When I came back, sitting on the bed was a pair of Army-issue OD green boxers, a pair of OD green socks for combat boots, but no boots. Also sitting on the bed was a pistol belt, an OD green fatigue shirt combat issue, with Staff Sergeant chevrons on the sleeves. And yes, there was a Stetson in there too. I yelled, "Lon, what is going on?" She told me to look at the picture on the table. Yes, there was the picture of me in Vietnam, the big one I hated. She told me, not that one. The one below it. There was a picture of me as a staff sergeant, wearing a Stetson, bullshitting with some of my buddies in the field. Now I got it. I was already stripped down. So, into the abbreviated Army uniform I went. Lon asked, "Are you ready?" And when I said I was, she opened the door and came out. Now that was a surprise. She was wearing white vinyl go-go boots with 3-inch platforms, gartered nylons, tight short shorts, and a cowboy vest. She wiggled up to me and said, "You want go boom boom, cowboy?" I simply nodded. She flashed a sly smile. $30, cowboy, and he'll take care of you. I reached into my pocket, pulled out 2 20s, and handed them to her. "No need for change, cowboy," she said. "They'll make it worth your while." Before I knew it, she was already at work, moving with practiced ease. Just as I was about to lose myself in the moment, she looked up and asked, "Want more, cowboy?" "A little extra for 50. I handed her 3 20s. "No change, cowboy. That just means it'll take my time." She helped me remove my gear, setting my belt and shirt aside, before pushing me back onto the bed. "Leave the hat on, cowboy," she said with a teasing grin. Every now and then, her eyes flickered toward the photo of me with my buddies. She moved with confidence, taking control, matching every motion like she had done this 100 times before. She reached her own peak before I did, but I caught up soon after. "Another round for 50, cowboy, and he'll take care of you again," she offered, flashing a knowing smirk. I handed her more bills without hesitation. No change was expected, and I didn't ask for any. Once we finished, she stretched out beside me, her fingers tracing patterns on my skin. "Husband comes home soon, cowboy. Time to shower and leave." I followed her into the bathroom, and we helped each other clean up. As the warm water ran over us, I felt the pull of temptation again. "I'm out of money," I admitted, "but I wouldn't mind another go before your husband gets back." She laughed softly, shaking her head. "No money, no extra time, cowboy. My husband gets it for free. If a man wants something special, he has to pay." Curious, I asked, "What do you do with the money?" She smiled. "Husband will make me a mother soon. Need clothes for the baby." By the time we were done, exhaustion had set in. I carried her to bed, knowing we had an early flight in the morning. As I lay beside her, My eyes drifted to the photo of me with my old friends. She caught my gaze, then whispered, "I love you, husband. Always have, always will." Something in the way she looked at me cut deep. It was a look of gratitude, of devotion. I glanced at the picture again, then back at her. The weight of the past and the present pressed in on me as I held her close. It finally clicked. I finally got my wedding surprise. It was that look, that "you saved me" puppy dog look. Why didn't I ever see it before? Finally figured it out, didn't you, big dummy? My bride said with a smile. Like your surprise? I love my surprise. Lon had been in love with me from the day I saved her. I never even knew her name. Somehow she got the word out. And the Vietnamese community was not going to let me marry the wrong person. I guess that is why the photos and recordings kept showing up. How did they do that? When it was all over, the American Sergeant First Class was ambushed and conquered by a little girl, only 10 years his junior, but she won. With superior determination and unending love. Maybe that is not such a bad picture after all. That's the story of how one act of kindness changed a soldier's life forever. Was it fate or just coincidence? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.